Hey guys, it's Miss Laverty. This is my second attempt at your online video lesson today about 10.2 histograms. The reason this is my second attempt is because the first one was rather long, and I don't want you to have to listen to me any longer than necessary. Just want you to get the ideas, get them down on paper, understand them, and have some time to practice. So, hopefully at this point you're all set up with Miss Babcock, and you're on your best behaviors and having a great day. You should have this packet in front of you. There are 4 parts to this packet. We're going to start with part 1 right now. You should have this packet follow along with me as we're completing the notes and as I'm explaining the concepts to you. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, today we're talking about histograms. A couple nights ago, I know you guys should have completed the video about histograms and how to create them. So we're going to talk about them today, take it a step further, being able to create one yourself and being able to understand what it is that they mean and what the data tells us. And I've got some fun little tricks, things like this. Oh, there's my little pointer. It's a lightsaber. Can't even make them repeat. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, I think I'm going to stick mostly to my little dot for the most part to explain things. It's a little bit easier to point out. So here is our histogram that we're going to start with today. The histogram is called CDs Owned. It has a title. Here's our CD. I know CDs aren't something that you guys see a whole lot of these days, so let's just pretend it's a DVD. Our x-axis tells us the number of CDs, and we call these numbers here intervals, or we call them buckets, ranges of data values that we're looking at for each bar. On our y-axis, this is called our frequency. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and each of these frequencies line up with a different one of these bars. This is similar to a bar graph. It's a little bit different, mostly in the fact that we have our x-axis labeled with intervals rather than one particular value. Another difference with a histogram is that there's no space between our bars in the histogram, where oftentimes you will see space in a bar graph, kind of like this. For one bar, you'll see all this space we don't want to see on a histogram. And each of these bars would only have one number rather than the entire value or ranges of value that we're talking about. Let's get rid of those guys. Alright, so let's keep going and talking about this particular histogram. In the range of values from 0 to 9, we see a frequency of 4. So what that means is 4 people own anywhere from 0 to 9 CDs. Now we don't know exactly how many CDs those 4 people owned. One person could have owned 1, another person could have owned 3, another could have owned 3, and another could have owned 8. Or we could be wrong. All 4 of those people could have owned 0 CDs. We don't know the exact amount that each person owned. So with a histogram, we don't know exact data values, we just know ranges of data values. Same thing for 10 to 19. 3 people owned anywhere from 10 to 19 CDs. 1 person owned anywhere from 20 to 29, and 2 people owned anywhere from 30 to 39. Here are a few questions to see if you're really understanding this concept of the histogram. If I were to ask you how many people were polled in this histogram, what we need to do is look at each of the frequencies that all of our bars meet at. Since we know that 4 people own 0 to 9 CDs, we're going to start with 4. Our next interval had 3 people, our next interval had 1, and our next had 2. If we add that 4 plus 3 plus 1 plus 2, 4 and 3 we get 7, plus 1 we get 8, and add 2 we get 10. So a total of 10 people were polled for this histogram. Now if I were to ask you how many people polled had 9 or fewer CDs, hopefully you look right in this section here. See 9 or fewer CDs. How many people? Well, we know that 4 people had 9 or fewer. We just don't know exactly how many they had. And our final question for this histogram is how many people polled had 15 CDs? Well, 15 falls in this range of 10 to 19. How many people had 15? Well, we know that 3 had anywhere from 10 to 19, but do we know how many people had exactly 15 CDs? We don't. We can't tell if anyone had exactly 15. in this range, one person could have had 10, one person could have had 19, and another person could have also had 19. We don't know if anyone in this range had exactly 15, so this answer cannot be determined. Let's go ahead and fill in our notes for this section of our notes for today. A histogram is a bar graph that shows the frequency of data values in intervals of the same size. So if we take a look over at our histogram, all of our intervals are the same size, 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and 30 to 39. They all go up with 10 values. We can't have intervals that are different. For example, 0 to 9, 10 to 15, those interval values would be different, and they always must be the same size. And for our next section, the height of a bar represents the frequency of the values in the interval. So if we look back at our bar graph, our histogram, we can see that the height of these bars tell us the frequency of the values in that particular interval. All right, so let's move down your page and take a look at example number 1, making a histogram. Now, you guys don't have to actually write anything in this section today, just follow along with me. On the next page, you are going to be creating your own histogram using these same steps and directions. Then you're going to take your image of the histogram and take a picture of it and submit it to Schoology. So let's take a look here. The frequency table, which is right here, shows the numbers of laps that people in a swimming class completed today. Display the data in a histogram. So here's our frequency table. Here's our intervals. They give us our intervals. Here's the frequency that should occur at each of those intervals. First, we're going to start with step 1, draw and label the axes. Okay, so we would draw and label our x and y axes. Label our x-axes with the intervals, so the numbers that they give us, and the title, in this case, number of laps. Then we have to label and draw our y-axis, which is the frequency axis. All of these numbers should go along this side. Now, you may go up by, in this case, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. They went up by 2s. You might go up by 1s. You may go up by 5s or 10s. It will range depending on each different problem that you're working on. So taking a look at this histogram, we can see that this note here tells us to include any interval with a frequency of 0. The bar height is 0. So while we drew a bar to 11 for our 1 to 3 interval, fell right between the 10 and the 12, we drew a bar of a 4 height, meaning 4 people went anywhere from 4 to 6 laps, but 0 people, so a bar height of 0, went anywhere from 7 to 9 laps. 3 people, right between the 2 and the 4, did 10 to 12 laps, and 6 people did 13 to 15 laps. Here's another note for us. There is no space between the bars of a histogram. We talked about that a little bit above. It's different from a bar graph. There's no space between each bar unless we're leaving a gap to show that there's a frequency of 0. But each bar of a histogram should be attached to the bar next to it. One other thing to note is that all histograms should have a title. In this case, it's laps completed. What I want you to do now is go to the next page and take a look at the on your own problem. It says the frequency table shows the ages of people riding a roller coaster. Display the data in a histogram. In the box on the next page, you're going to create your histogram using these steps here. Make sure that you don't have any space between each bar, and that you have a title, and that all of your axes are properly labeled. Once you're done your histogram, compare it with your neighbor, someone near you. Then you're going to take a picture of it on your iPad. Then then you're going to submit your picture to Schoology under the appropriate assignment in part 1. Then you're going to check my answer key that I create for you. And after that, you're going to tell me whether or not, after you check the answer key, if there were any changes or corrections that you had to make to your histogram. If not, make sure you make a submission telling me no changes necessary. All right, good luck on the On Your Own problem.